pregnant and locked in a basement while millionaire husband partied upstairs until the maid found me. The cold seeped into my bones first, then into my belly. I pressed my palms against the concrete floor of my own basement, feeling the vibrations of bass music pulsing through the ceiling above me. Laughter, champagne corks popping, the clinking of crystal glasses. My husband's birthday party was in full swing, and I could hear every second of it from down here in the dark. I was 6 months pregnant, locked in a windowless room beneath my own mansion, while the man who put me here was upstairs charming 300 guests with his perfect smile. My fingers were numb, my lips were turning blue, and the baby, my sweet baby, had stopped moving 20 minutes ago. I pressed my hands against my belly and whispered into the darkness, "Please, please keep moving, please be okay." Above me, I heard Dustin's voice boom through a microphone. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate with me tonight. This house, this life, none of it would be possible without hard work and determination." Hard work? Determination? He was standing in a house I inherited, wearing a suit I paid for, surrounded by business partners who invested in him because of my family's name, and his pregnant wife was freezing to death in the basement because she threatened to tell the truth? I started banging on the steel door again, even though my hands were raw and bleeding, even though I knew no one could hear me over the music, even though I knew my husband had planned it exactly this way. But I also knew something Dustin didn't. I knew that everything he thought he owned was still mine, every stock, every property, every single dollar. And I had spent the last 3 months making sure that when this marriage ended, he would leave with nothing but the clothes on his back. The only question was whether I would survive long enough to see it happen. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from, and don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 at the end. Now, let's continue. I met Dustin Mercer at a charity gala in Greenwich, Connecticut 7 years ago. I was 24, recently graduated from Yale, and freshly heartbroken from a relationship that had consumed my early 20s. He was 31, devastatingly handsome, and had the kind of confidence that filled every room he entered. My family, the Whitmores, had been in Connecticut for 5 generations. Old money, real estate, trust funds that multiplied while we slept. I grew up in a 12-bedroom estate with a name, Whitmore Hall, and I spent my childhood feeling suffocated by the weight of it all. I never wanted to be defined by my last name. I studied art history because I loved it, not because it was practical. I volunteered at shelters instead of attending debutante balls. I drove a 10-year-old Volvo when my father offered to buy me a Porsche. So when Dustin Mercer looked at me across that crowded ballroom and saw me, not my inheritance, not my family name, just me, I felt something I had never felt before. He was a self-made man, he told me, grew up poor in Ohio, worked construction to pay for a community college, clawed his way into finance through sheer determination. He had a small investment firm that was struggling, but he believed in it. He believed in himself. I admired that. I admired him. Our courtship was a whirlwind. He took me to hole-in-the-wall restaurants instead of 5-star establishments. He cooked me dinner in his tiny apartment in Stamford. He told me stories about his childhood, about going hungry, about watching his mother work 3 jobs, and I cried for the boy he had been. When he proposed after 8 months, I said yes without hesitation. My father was skeptical. He wanted Dustin to sign a prenuptial agreement, a standard one that protected the Whitmore assets. Dustin agreed immediately, without argument, without negotiation. He looked my father in the eye and said he was marrying me for love, not money. I thought that was the most romantic thing I had ever heard. We got married at Whitmore Hall. 400 guests, a dress that costs more than most people's houses, and when Dustin carried me over the threshold of our new home, a mansion I had purchased in Greenwich, I thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. The changes started small. First, it was suggestions, helpful ones, he said. Maybe I should let him handle the finances since he was the one with the business background. Maybe I should put his name on the house deed since we were married now, and it was weird that only my name was on it. Maybe I should give him access to my trust fund distributions so he could invest them properly. I said no to the house deed. Something in my gut told me to keep that boundary, but I said yes to everything else. He seemed so grateful, so loving. He told me I was the best thing that had ever happened to him, that he would spend the rest of his life making sure I knew how much he appreciated me. Within a year, his struggling investment firm had transformed. With my family's money backing him and my family's name opening doors, Dustin Mercer became a rising star in Connecticut finance. He bought expensive suits, he joined the country club, he started collecting watches that cost more than cars. And somewhere along the way, he stopped looking at me the way he used to. I noticed it first at parties. He would introduce me as his wife and then immediately pivot to talking about himself, his deals, his vision, his success. I became an accessory, something pretty to stand beside him while he networked. Then I noticed it at home. He started coming back late from the office, smelling like perfume that was not mine. He criticized the way I dressed, the way I talked, the way I spent my days. Nothing I did was ever good enough. When I confronted him about the perfume, he laughed. He told me I was being paranoid, insecure. He said that maybe if I tried harder to be interesting, he would not need to seek stimulation elsewhere. I tried harder. I changed my hair. I bought new clothes. I took cooking classes so I could make elaborate dinners for him. I shrunk myself smaller and smaller, trying to fit into the mold of the woman he wanted me to be. It was never enough. The first time I found concrete evidence of his affairs, we had been married 3 years. A receipt for a hotel room on a night he said he was in Boston for business. I confronted him, and he did not even try to deny it. "She means nothing," he said. "You are my wife. You are the one I come home to. Why are you making this into something it is not?" I should have left then. I know that now. But I had spent 3 years letting him convince me that I was the problem, that I was too demanding, too emotional, too much. I had spent 3 years watching my identity dissolve into his shadow. So I stayed. I told myself that all marriages had rough patches. I told myself that he would change. I told myself that the man I fell in love with was still in there somewhere. But the man I fell in love with had never existed at all. The worst part was watching myself disappear. It happened so gradually that I did not even notice at first. One day I was Lila Whitmore, a woman with opinions and dreams and a voice that mattered. The next day, or so it seemed, I was Mrs. Dustin Mercer, a silent shadow who existed only to make her husband look good. I stopped seeing my friends because Dustin said they were bad influences. I stopped calling my parents because Dustin said they were too controlling. I stopped pursuing my art history research because Dustin said it was a waste of time. I stopped wearing colors because Dustin said they made me look cheap. I stopped laughing loudly because Dustin said it was unladylike. Every time I gave something up, he told me it was for my own good. He told me he was helping me become a better version of myself. And I believed him because I had forgotten what my own voice sounded like. I remember the moment I realized how far I had fallen. We were at a dinner party at the country club. Someone asked me a question about my opinion on something, I do not even remember what, and I looked at Dustin first. I waited for him to nod before I answered, like a trained dog waiting for permission from its master. When we got home that night, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried for 2 hours. Not because Dustin had done anything cruel, but because I had done something worse to myself. I had let him erase me. But even then, even knowing what I had become, I stayed. because by that point, I did not know how to leave. I had no friends to call, no family nearby, no money that was not controlled by him. The golden cage had bars I could not see, but they were just as real as iron. And then I found out I was pregnant. I found out I was pregnant on a Tuesday morning in March. I sat on the bathroom floor of our Greenwich mansion, staring at the positive test, and for the first time in years, I felt hope. A baby, a family. Maybe this was what we needed. Maybe becoming a father would remind Dustin of what really mattered. I planned a special dinner to tell him. Candles, his favorite wine, a onesie wrapped in a little box. I practiced my words in the mirror, trying to find the perfect way to share the news. When Dustin came home, he was in a bad mood. Some deal had fallen through, and he was looking for someone to blame. He barely glanced at the candles, barely acknowledged the effort I had put into the evening. I handed him the box anyway. He opened it, looked at the onesie, looked at me, and his face went cold. "What is this?" he asked. I told him I was pregnant, that we were going to have a baby, that I was so happy and I hoped he was too. He set the box down on the table and looked at me like I was a stranger, like I had just told him something horrible instead of something wonderful. "You did this on purpose," he said. I did not understand. Did what on purpose? "You got pregnant to trap me, to tie me down. Do you have any idea what this is going to do to my image, to my business? I cannot be seen as some family man with a pregnant wife. That is not the brand I am building." I felt like he had slapped me. This was my husband, the father of my child, and he was talking about our baby like it was a PR problem. I tried to reason with him. I told him that plenty of successful men had families, that a baby could be a blessing, not a burden, that I would handle most of the childcare so it would not interfere with his work. But Dustin was not interested in reason. He was interested in control, and a baby was something he could not control. He threw the onesie in the trash on his way out the door that night. I sat at the table for hours, candles burning down to nothing, food getting cold, trying to understand how my life had come to this. The next morning, I found him in his office, on the phone with someone. He was laughing, relaxed, like nothing had happened. When he saw me standing in the doorway, he told the person on the phone he would call them back. "We need to talk about the baby," he said. His voice was calm now, businesslike. He had clearly spent the night thinking about how to handle this problem. I waited. "I have been thinking," he continued. "If we are going to do this, there will be rules. The pregnancy stays private until I decide when to announce it. You will not get fat. You will continue to attend events and look presentable. And the moment the baby is born, we hire a full-time nanny. I am not changing diapers or losing sleep." I listened to him lay out his terms like he was negotiating a business deal, and something inside me started to harden, to crystallize, to become the person I would need to be to survive. I agreed to everything he said. I smiled. I told him I understood. But inside, I was already planning. From that day forward, everything changed. He stopped pretending to be kind, stopped pretending to love me. He made it clear that he resented the pregnancy and that he resented me for getting pregnant. He started staying out later, spending more money, bringing women to events where he knew I would see him with them. And then he started taking things away. First, it was my car keys. He said I should not be driving in my condition, that he would hire a driver for me. What he really meant was that he would control where I went and when. Then it was my credit cards. He said we needed to consolidate our finances, that it made more sense for everything to go through him. What he really meant was that he wanted me to ask permission for every purchase. Then it was my phone. He said he was worried about me, that he wanted to be able to reach me at all times. What he really meant was that he wanted to monitor my calls, my texts, my emails. Then it was my passport, my birth certificate, my social security card. He put them all in a safe in his office, a safe I did not have the combination to. I was trapped, pregnant and trapped in a mansion that belonged to me, controlled by a man who had nothing without me. But here's what Dustin did not understand about me. I had spent my entire life watching powerful men underestimate women. I had watched my own father dismiss my mother's intelligence, only to be blindsided when she outmaneuvered him in their divorce. I had grown up knowing that sometimes the smartest thing a woman can do is let a man believe he is winning. So I started watching, learning, planning. I found a lawyer, a woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in domestic abuse cases. I met with her in secret at a coffee shop in Westport where no one would recognize me. I told her everything: the financial control, the emotional abuse, the isolation. Patricia looked at me with steady eyes and said, "We are going to get you out of this, but we need to do it carefully. We need to document everything, and we need to make sure that when you leave with everything that is rightfully yours." Over the next 3 months, I gathered evidence: screenshots of his texts with other women, bank statements showing how he had moved my family's money into accounts with only his name, recordings of his verbal abuse made on a tiny device Patricia gave me that looked like a pen. I became a different person during those months. On the surface, I was the same obedient wife Dustin expected. I smiled at his parties. I agreed with his opinions. I let him believe he had broken me completely. But underneath, I was meticulous, strategic, patient. Every time he humiliated me, I wrote down the date, the time, and exactly what he said. Every time he moved money without telling me, I made copies of the statements. Every time he came home smelling like another woman's perfume, I noted it in a journal that I kept hidden in a hollowed-out book in the library. Patricia was impressed by my thoroughness. Most women in your situation are too afraid or too emotionally overwhelmed to document anything, she told me. You are building a case that no judge will be able to ignore. I was not doing it for the judge. I was doing it for my daughter. I was doing it so that one day, when she asked me why I stayed so long, I could tell her the truth, that I was never just enduring. I was preparing. I also discovered something that changed everything. Dustin's business, the one I had funded with my inheritance, was not just successful, it was criminal. He was running an investment fraud scheme, promising returns he could never deliver, using new investors' money to pay old investors. A Ponzi scheme built on the foundation of my family's reputation. When I showed Patricia the evidence, she went pale. "This is not just divorce material," she said. "This is federal. This could put him away for a very long time." I felt something I had not felt in years: power. But I also felt fear, because I knew that if Dustin found out what I was planning, he would do anything to stop me. The week before Dustin's 40th birthday, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. I had been snooping through his office looking for more evidence when I found an email chain between him and a woman named Megan Sinclair. I recognized the name. She was a socialite I had met at charity events, beautiful and ambitious and always a little too friendly with my husband. The emails made it clear that they had been having an affair for over 2 years. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the email from 3 days earlier. Megan had written to Dustin about his upcoming birthday party. She wrote about how excited she was to finally be able to stand by his side in public, how she had bought a new dress for the occasion, a red Valentino that Dustin had paid for, how she could not wait for everyone to see them together. And then she wrote something that made me stop breathing. "I know you said Layla will not be at the party, but are you sure she won't make a scene? The last thing we need is for her to show up and ruin everything." Dustin's response was brief: "Do not worry about Layla. I have it handled. She will not be a problem." I sat in his office for a long time, reading those words over and over. I have it handled. She will not be a problem. What did that mean? Was he going to drug me, lock me in my room, have someone physically restrain me? I did not know, but I knew I needed to be at that party. I needed to see exactly what he had planned, and I needed to make sure that when he tried to silence me, I had witnesses. The night of Dustin's birthday party, I put on a brave face. I wore an emerald green gown that had cost $4,000. I did my hair and makeup perfectly. I looked like the elegant wife of a successful man, which is exactly what Dustin wanted everyone to see. What he did not want them to see was the truth. 300 guests arrived at our Greenwich mansion that night. Business partners, politicians, old money families from all over Connecticut. The house was transformed into a wonderland of white flowers and crystal chandeliers and champagne towers that sparkled under the lights. And there, right in the middle of it all, was Megan Sinclair. She was wearing the red Valentino dress from the emails. She was standing next to my husband, laughing at his jokes, touching his arm, acting like she belonged there, acting like she was the lady of the house. I felt something break inside me, not my heart. That had broken long ago. Something else. Something that had been holding me back, keeping me quiet, keeping me small. I walked up to Dustin and Megan with a smile on my face. I kissed my husband on the cheek and introduced myself to his guest as if I had never seen her before. Dustin's eyes went dark. He grabbed my arm, hard enough to leave bruises, and pulled me aside. "What are you doing down here?" he hissed. "You were supposed to stay upstairs. The doctor said you needed rest." "I have not seen any doctor," I said, "and this is my house. I can go wherever I want." His grip tightened. "I am warning you, Layla. Do not make a scene." "Or what?" I asked. "What will you do, Dustin? Lock me in the basement?" I said it as a joke, a bitter, angry joke. I did not know that I was giving him an idea. 20 minutes later, he found me near the kitchen, away from the main party. He told me we needed to talk privately, that he wanted to apologize, that he had been too harsh earlier. I should have known better. I should have refused to go anywhere with him alone. But some part of me, some stupid, hopeful part, still wanted to believe he was capable of being the man I married. He led me down the hallway toward the back of the house, toward the door that led to the basement. "Where are we going?" I asked. He did not answer. He just opened the door and shoved me through it. I stumbled down the first few steps, catching myself on the railing. My belly was heavy, off balance. I could have fallen. I could have lost the baby right there. "Dustin," I screamed, "what are you doing?" He stood at the top of the stairs, silhouetted against the light from the hallway. His face was calm, expressionless, like he was doing something completely reasonable. "You wanted to make a scene," he said. "You wanted to embarrass me in front of my guests. Well, now you can scream all you want. No one will hear you down here." He closed the door. I heard the lock click into place. And then I heard his footsteps walking away, back toward the party, back toward Megan, back toward the life he had built on my money and my name and my broken heart. I stood at the top of the stairs for a long moment, unable to believe what had just happened. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing so fast I could feel it in my throat. I tried the door, locked. Solid steel, the kind of door you install when you have expensive wine you want to protect from temperature changes and humidity. Dustin had never cared about wine, but he had cared about having a room in the house where no one could hear what happened inside. I wondered, in that horrible moment, if this had always been his plan, if he had looked at this basement years ago and thought, "This is where I will put her when she becomes inconvenient." The thought made me want to vomit. The basement was cold, so cold. It was an old wine cellar that we had never renovated. Stone walls, concrete floor, a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling that flickered every few minutes. No windows, no phone, no way out. I pounded on the door until my hands were bleeding. I screamed until my voice was raw, but Dustin had planned this perfectly. The basement was on the opposite side of the house from the party. The music was loud, the walls were thick. No one could hear me. I sank down onto the cold floor and wrapped my arms around my belly. The baby was still moving, thank God, little kicks and flutters that reminded me I was not alone. I talked to my baby in the darkness. I told her I was sorry. I told her that her father was not a good man, but that did not mean she would not have a good life. I told her that I would get us out of this, that I would protect her no matter what. I do not know how long I sat there. Time lost all meaning in the dark. But eventually I started to get cold, really cold. My teeth were chattering, my fingers were numb, and the baby's movements were getting slower. That was when the fear set in. Hypothermia. I knew the signs from a first aid class I had taken years ago. Shivering, confusion, slowed heart rate. In pregnant women, it could cause the placenta to detach. It could kill the baby. I forced myself to stand up, to move, to keep my blood circulating. I paced the small basement, counting my steps, trying to stay warm, trying to stay conscious. And I started to bang on the door again. Not randomly this time, rhythmically, a pattern. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. SOS, the only Morse code I remembered. I did not really think anyone would hear me, but I had to try. For my baby. For myself. I had to try. Hannah Cole had worked for the Mercer household for 2 years. She was a quiet woman in her 50s, originally from Jamaica, who had come to America 30 years ago and worked her way up from housekeeper to senior staff at some of the finest homes in Connecticut. She was professional, discreet, and exceptionally good at her job. She was also the only person in the house who had ever shown me genuine kindness. I learned later what it had cost her to work for Dustin. He berated the staff constantly. He threw things when he was angry. He withheld wages for invented infractions. 3 housekeepers had quit before Hannah arrived, and 2 more had left during her first year. But Hannah needed the job. She was sending money back to Jamaica to support her grandchildren. She was saving for a small house of her own. She endured Dustin's cruelty because the alternative was worse. When I first moved into the mansion, I made a point of learning all the staff members' names. I asked about their families, their lives, their dreams. Dustin thought I was being foolish. He told me that servants were supposed to be invisible, that getting friendly with them would make them think they could take advantage. But I did not see them as servants. I saw them as people, and Hannah Cole saw that. I remember the day Dustin screamed at her for leaving a water glass on the wrong table. I was in the next room, listening to him call her worthless, stupid, incompetent. When he finally stormed away, I found Hannah in the kitchen, her hands trembling as she tried to polish silverware. "I am sorry," I told her. "He did not deserve that." She looked at me with surprise. In all her years of domestic work, I wonder how many employers had ever apologized to her for their spouse's behavior. "It is just part of the job," she said quietly. "No," I said, "it should not be." From that day on, we had a silent understanding. I would intervene when I could. I would leave extra cash in places I knew she would find it. I would make sure Dustin's worst moods did not land on her shoulders. And Hannah, in return, watched out for me. She saw the bruises I tried to hide. She heard the arguments through thin walls. She knew, even before I admitted it to myself, that my husband was a monster. Over the years, we had developed a quiet friendship. She would bring me tea when I was having a bad day. She would leave little notes of encouragement in places she knew only I would find them. She never said anything directly about my husband, but I could see in her eyes that she knew. She knew what kind of man he was. On the night of the party, Hannah was working near the service entrance, directing the catering staff and making sure everything ran smoothly. It was a chaotic night, with hundreds of guests and dozens of things that could go wrong. But Hannah was the kind of person who noticed things other people missed. She noticed that Mrs. Mercer had disappeared from the party. She noticed that Mr. Mercer seemed unusually relaxed, almost smug as he circulated through the crowd with that woman in the red dress. And she noticed a strange sound coming from somewhere in the back of the house, a rhythmic banging, muffled but persistent, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. Hannah knew Morse code. Her father had been a radio operator in the Navy. She also knew that the basement was supposed to be empty, that no one had any reason to be down there during the party. But someone was down there. Someone was calling for help. Hannah made a decision in that moment, a decision that would change both of our lives. She slipped away from the service area and made her way to the housekeeper's office. She knew where the master keys were kept. She knew that taking them without permission could cost her job, could get her blacklisted from every household in Greenwich. But she also knew that something was very wrong. She found the keys, she made her way to the basement door, and when she turned that lock and pulled open the door, she found me collapsed on the top step, barely conscious, my skin blue and my eyes unfocused. "Mrs. Mercer," she gasped. "Oh my Lord, what happened to you?" I grabbed her arm with whatever strength I had left. My voice was a whisper, rough from screaming. "Call the police," I said. "Not an ambulance, the police. I want everyone to see." Hannah did not hesitate. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911. While we waited, she wrapped her own coat around me. She rubbed my arms, trying to get blood flowing back into my frozen limbs. She talked to me, keeping me conscious, keeping me focused. "Stay with me, Mrs. Mercer," she said. "Help is coming. You are going to be okay. You and that baby, you are both going to be just fine." I looked up at her through blurry eyes. "You know what this could cost you," I whispered. "He will fire you. He will destroy you." Hannah met my gaze with steady eyes. "Let him try," she said. "Some things are more important than a paycheck. You taught me that." When the paramedics arrived, I refused to go out the back entrance. I made them take me through the main house, through the ballroom, past every guest who had come to toast my husband's success. If I was going to destroy Dustin Mercer, I was going to do it in front of witnesses. The first sign that something was wrong was the lights, red and blue, flashing through the tall windows of the ballroom. The music stuttered and stopped. 300 guests turned toward the front of the house, champagne glasses frozen halfway to their lips. Dustin was in the middle of a toast when the police cars pulled up. He tried to keep smiling, tried to maintain his composure, but I could see the confusion in his eyes. He handed his glass to Megan and excused himself. "Probably a noise complaint," he announced to the crowd. "These neighbors have no appreciation for a good party. I will handle it." But he could not handle it. The police did not knock. They came in through the service entrance, led by Hannah, who had met them at the gate. 2 officers and 2 paramedics, moving with purpose through the back of the house toward the basement. By the time Dustin realized what was happening, it was too late. I was being carried up from the basement on a stretcher, wrapped in thermal blankets, an oxygen mask over my face, a paramedic holding my hand and monitoring my vitals. They brought me through the main hallway, through the ballroom, past every single guest who had come to celebrate my husband's success. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. I could hear the gasps, the whispers, the sound of 300 phones being pulled out to record what was happening. And there was Dustin, standing in the middle of it all, his perfect party crumbling around him. He tried to take control. He pushed through the crowd toward me, his face arranged in an expression of concern. "Oh my God, Layla," he said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "What happened? I have been looking for you everywhere. You must have gone down to the basement and gotten locked in somehow. Thank God someone found you." He was good, I will give him that. Even in that moment, he was trying to spin the narrative. But I was done letting him control the story. I pulled the oxygen mask away from my face. The room went silent. "He locked me down there," I said. My voice was weak, but in that silence, everyone heard me. "My husband locked me in the basement because I threatened to tell you all the truth about him." Dustin's face went white. "Layla, you are confused. The cold has affected your thinking. You do not know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I am saying." I looked at the police officer standing next to my stretcher. "I want to press charges: unlawful imprisonment, assault, endangering the life of my unborn child." The officer nodded. He stepped toward Dustin. "Sir, I am going to need you to come with us." Dustin backed away, his hands up. "This is insane. This is my house, my party. You cannot arrest me at my own birthday party." He looked around the room, searching for allies, but every face he saw was turned away. His business partners were edging toward the exits. His society friends were pretending not to know him. Even Megan had retreated to the far corner of the room, trying to make herself invisible. "There is no way this is happening," Dustin continued, his voice getting higher and more desperate. "Do you know who I am? Do you know how much money I have? I will have your badges for this." The officer was unmoved. "Sir, you can come quietly, or you can make this harder on yourself. Your choice." Dustin made one last attempt. He turned to me, his face twisted with rage. "This is not over, Layla. You think you have won? I will destroy you. I will take everything from you. I will make sure you never see that baby." And that was when I played my final card. "Actually," I said, sitting up on the stretcher despite the paramedics' protests, "it is not your house." Everyone was staring at me now. Dustin, Megan, the 300 guests, the police, the caterers who had stopped working to watch the spectacle. "This house belongs to me," I continued. My voice was getting stronger now, fueled by 5 years of suppressed anger. "It has always belonged to me. It is in my name alone. I never added him to the deed because something told me never to trust him completely, and I was right." I looked at the police officer. "He does not have permission to be on my property. I want him removed. Now." Dustin's face went through several colors: white, red, purple. He looked like he was about to have a stroke. "You cannot do this," he screamed at me. "I built this life. I made us what we are." "No," I said calmly. "My family's money built this life. My name opened every door you walked through, and my trust is what you betrayed every single day of our marriage. You did not build anything, Dustin. You stole it, and now I am taking it back." The officer stepped forward with the handcuffs. The sound of those metal bracelets clicking shut around my husband's wrists was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. As they put the handcuffs on Dustin, I turned my attention to the woman in the red dress. Megan had been trying to edge toward the exit, hoping to slip away unnoticed in the chaos. She had almost made it to the door when I called out, "One more thing, officer." Everyone turned to look at me. Megan froze. "That woman," I said, pointing directly at her, "the one in the red Valentino dress. That dress was purchased with my credit card, a card that was stolen by my husband and given to her. I have the receipts and the bank statements to prove it." Megan's face went pale. She started shaking her head, backing away. "I had nothing to do with this," she stammered. "I did not know he was married. He told me they were separated." "You were at my house," I said calmly. "You have been to parties where I was introduced as his wife. You have spoken to me, looked me in the eye, and smiled while sleeping with my husband. Do not stand there and pretend you are innocent." The guests were murmuring now, a low rumble of shock and judgment. This was the kind of scandal that would be talked about for years. "Officer," I continued, "I would like that dress confiscated as evidence, and I would like her removed from my property as well." I heard she moved to Florida, started over. I hope she learned something from the experience, but I doubt it. The trial was swift and brutal. Dustin's lawyers tried everything. They claimed I had fabricated the evidence. They claimed the basement incident was a misunderstanding. They even tried to argue that I was mentally unstable and had locked myself in the basement for attention. But Patricia had prepared me well. Every piece of evidence was bulletproof. The recordings, the financial documents, the testimony of Hannah and the other staff members who had witnessed years of abuse, the medical records showing my hypothermia and the stress to my pregnancy. The jury took less than 4 hours to convict. When the judge read the sentence, 14 years for the fraud and an additional 3 years for the domestic violence charges, Dustin finally broke. He started screaming that I had set him up, that I had ruined his life, that I would pay for this. The bailiffs had to drag him out of the courtroom. I sat in the gallery, one hand on my swollen belly, and felt nothing but peace. Not satisfaction, not triumph, just peace. The monster who had controlled my life for 5 years was finally going to face consequences, and I was finally free. 3 months after the party, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. I named her Grace Whitmore, not Mercer. She would carry my family name, not her father's. She was born in the same hospital where I had been treated for hypothermia that terrible night. The same nurses who had monitored my vitals in the emergency room were there to help deliver my daughter. They told me I was strong, that Grace was strong, that we were both survivors. When I held her for the first time, I cried. Not from sadness, not from fear, from pure, overwhelming joy. This tiny person, this perfect little girl, had survived everything with me. The stress, the cold, the terror. She had fought to be here, and she had won. I whispered a promise to her in that hospital room. I told her that she would never know the kind of fear I had known, that she would grow up surrounded by love and safety and truth, that she would learn from my mistakes without having to make them herself. Megan's face crumpled. She started to cry, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers, the perfect image of the other woman finally facing consequences. 2 officers approached her, and she did not resist as they escorted her toward the door. "Wait!" she called out, turning back toward Dustin. "Dustin, tell them this is all a misunderstanding." But Dustin was not looking at her. He was staring at me with pure hatred in his eyes, finally understanding that the woman he had dismissed as weak had been his downfall all along. The guests were recording everything. I could see the phones pointed at us from every direction. By tomorrow morning, this would be all over social media. By tomorrow afternoon, it would be on the news. Dustin Mercer's reputation was being destroyed in real time, and I was the one destroying it. The investigation into Dustin Mercer took 3 months. Patricia Chen had prepared me well. Every piece of evidence I had gathered, every recording, every document was turned over to the federal authorities. The Ponzi scheme, the fraud, the stolen money that he had funneled into offshore accounts. By the time the prosecutors were finished, Dustin was facing charges that would keep him in prison for 12 to 15 years. But the criminal charges were only part of his downfall. Remember that prenuptial agreement? The one Dustin signed so eagerly when we got married, wanting to prove that he was not after my money? It had a clause that Patricia had helped my father add all those years ago, a clause that stated if either party was convicted of a crime against the other spouse, the prenuptial agreement would be void and the criminal spouse would forfeit all claims to marital assets. Dustin did not just go to prison. He went to prison with nothing, no money, no property, no connections. The man who had spent 5 years building an empire on my family's wealth lost everything in a single night. As for Megan Sinclair, she was not charged with any crime. The stolen credit card was technically in Dustin's name, even if the money was mine. But her reputation was destroyed just as thoroughly as his. The society that had once welcomed her closed its doors. The men who had once pursued her wanted nothing to do with the woman who had been complicit in such a public scandal. And I told her that she was named Grace for a reason, because her arrival in my life was exactly that. Grace, undeserved, unexpected, the gift that made everything else worth surviving. I brought Grace home to the Greenwich Mansion. The house that had once felt like a prison now felt like a sanctuary. I had it redecorated, removing every trace of Dustin's presence. New furniture, new art, new energy. And I hired a new head of household staff. Hannah Cole had lost her job after the night of the party. Dustin's lawyers had tried to sue her for breach of confidentiality, for trespassing, for anything they could think of. The charges never stuck, but her name was mud in Greenwich society. So I gave her a new name, head housekeeper of the Whitmore estate. I tripled her salary. I gave her a cottage on the property where she could live rent-free for as long as she wanted. "You saved my life," I told her. "You saved my daughter's life. I can never repay that." Hannah just smiled. "You treated me like a person when no one else did," she said. "That is worth more than any salary." Sometimes, late at night when Grace is sleeping in her crib and the house is quiet, I think about the woman I used to be. The woman who fell in love with a charming man and believed his lies. The woman who let herself be diminished, controlled, erased. The woman who sat in a cold basement, wondering if she would survive the night. I am not that woman anymore. I am a mother now, a survivor, a woman who learned that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay quiet, pay attention, and wait for the right moment to strike. Dustin thought he had all the power. He thought I was weak, dependent, trapped. He thought he could lock me in a basement and continue his party like nothing had happened. He was wrong. The universe has a way of balancing the scales, of making sure that cruelty does not go unpunished, of giving strength to those who have been broken and taking everything from those who have broken them. I used to believe that money could not buy happiness. Now I know something different. Money cannot buy happiness, but it can buy freedom. It can buy safety. It can buy the ability to walk away from someone who hurts you and never look back. And sometimes, it can buy justice. I am sitting in the nursery now, watching Grace sleep. The moonlight is streaming through the window, casting silver shadows on the walls. Outside, the Connecticut night is quiet and peaceful. Tomorrow, I will wake up in a house that belongs to me. I will hold my daughter in my arms. I will have breakfast with Hannah, who has become more like family than any blood relative I have. And somewhere, in a federal prison, Dustin Mercer will wake up in a cell. He will think about everything he lost. He will remember the night his perfect life fell apart. He will remember me. Some people say that revenge is a dish best served cold, but I do not think of it as revenge. I think of it as consequences. I think of it as a woman finally standing up and refusing to be silent anymore. If you are out there listening to this and you are in a situation like mine, I want you to know something. You are not alone. You are not weak. You are not trapped. You are stronger than you know. And one day, when the time is right, you will find your way out. You will find your voice. You will find your power. And the people who hurt you will learn that underestimating a woman is the most dangerous mistake they can ever make. I got a letter from Dustin last month, his first communication in almost a year. He wrote that he was sorry, that prison had changed him, that he understood now what he had done wrong. He asked if he could see Grace when he got out. He asked if there was any chance I could forgive him. I read the letter twice. Then I burned it. Some people think I am being too harsh, that everyone deserves a second chance, that holding on to anger only hurts myself. But here is what I have learned. Forgiveness is not about the person who hurt you. It is about freeing yourself from the weight of what they did. And I have already freed myself. I freed myself the night I pointed at my husband in front of 300 people and told the truth. I do not need to give him anything else. Not my forgiveness, not my attention, not even my anger. He is nothing to me now. A name on a birth certificate, a cautionary tale I will one day tell my daughter, a ghost from a life I left behind. And that is exactly where he belongs. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories. See you next time.